to our ever-dynamic professor, Ma'am Nerissa and Beatrice, to my dear classmates, good day. I am Sheena Christine B. Pili, and mine is to discuss to you the domains of learning. Educators recognize that students learn in different ways, requiring them to establish teaching methods that emphasize each student's distinctive strengths. These concepts have influenced the field of education by encouraging a more holistic approach to learning. The domains of learning are a series of learning objectives created in 1956 by educational psychologist Dr. Benjamin Bloom. They involve 3 categories of education, and each one requires a different instruction style to achieve its intended outcomes. So here are the 3 domains of learning. We have the cognitive, also known as the thinking domain, the affective, which is also known as the feeling domain, and the psychomotor, also known as the kinesthetic movement. Let us discuss the first domain, which is the cognitive. The domain focuses on 6 intellectual skills that educational psychologist Benjamin Bloom organized based on the sequence in which students develop them. This concept is known as the Bloom taxonomy. For each skill, Bloom refers to active verbs that describe how students apply when they've learned. The original Bloom's taxonomy includes the following skills that build from the most basic to the most complex. The first one is the knowledge, recalling or recognizing information previously learned. The instructional verbs that represent this foundational level of the cognitive domain include write, list, label, name, and state. The next is the comprehension, comprehending or interpreting information based on material previously learned. The instructional verb include explain, summarize, describe, and illustrate. Next is the application, selecting and using data principles to fix a problem independently. The instructional verbs include use, solve, demonstrate, and apply. Next is analysis, understanding or breaking down assumptions made by a statement or question to make conclusions. Instructional verbs include compare, contrast, and analyze. Synthesis, combining ideas to build a new concept or plan. The instructional verb include create, design, invent, and develop. And the last one is the evaluation, making assessments based on established criteria. The instructional verbs include judge, critique, and justify. In 2001, one of Bloom's former students and colleagues revised the taxonomy to reflect its use in the modern school settings. Most elements remain the same but receive new names. We also swapped the position of the last 2 components. So this is now the newest version of the cognitive domain. So we have remember, formerly known as the knowledge. It recalls facts and basic concepts. So these are the verb, define, duplicate, list, memorize, repeat, and state. The second one is understand, formerly as comprehension. It explains ideas or concepts. These are the verb used: classify, describe, discuss, explain, identify, locate, recognize, report, select, and translate. The third one is apply, or formerly application. It uses information in new situation. The verb used are execute, implement, solve, use, demonstrate, interpret, operate, schedule, and sketch. The fourth one is the analyze, formerly the analysis. It draws connection among ideas. The verb used are differentiate, organize, relate, compare, contrast, distinguish, examine, experiment, question, and test. The next is evaluate, formerly the evaluation. It justifies a stand or decision. The verb used are appraise, argue, defend, judge, select, support, value, critique, and weight. And the last one is the create, or formerly the synthesis. It produces new or original work. The verb used are design, assemble, construct, conjecture, develop, formulate, author, and investigate. So this is the Bloom's taxonomy. So we come now to the affective domain. The affective domain of learning represents skills that foster appropriate emotional responses. In this domain, identified by Bloom's colleague, David Krathwohl, students understand and develop their feelings, attitudes, and values. Like the cognitive domain, the 5 areas of emotional response is from simple to complex. It includes receiving. The receiving involves a passive awareness of emotions and feelings, and a student must succeed at this level to learn at later stages. For example, a student at this age waits to speak until someone else finishes speaking. The instructional verbs include ask, choose, identify, and use. The next one is responding. A student actively engages in the learning process by receiving it and reacting to it. For example, a student participates in a class discussion of a book they read. The instructional verbs include assist, discuss, read, and write. Next is valuing. A student values a concept when they express its worth or what it means to them. For example, a student may write an opinion article about a social topic they feel strongly about, discussing and defending their stance. The instructional verbs include complete, explain, propose, and study. The next is organizing. A student develops a value system by arranging their values or beliefs in order of priority. For example, a student trying to make honor roll realizes they should prioritize studying for an upcoming test over going to the movies with friends. The instructional verbs include arrange, complete, modify, and prepare. The last is characterizing. A student acts according to the values they have developed and internalized as a personal philosophy. For example, a student accepts the cheating as an unethical and completes a difficult assignment independently, even though a friend offers to let them copy their answers. The instructional verbs include display, perform, question, and solve. We come now to the third domain, which is the psychomotor domain. It refers to the physical movement, coordination, and the use of motor skills area. This is also known as the kinesthetic movement. So the Bloom identified the psychomotor skills domain, and educators like Elizabeth Simpson expanded them into a simple to complex order in the 1970s. The psychomotor domain focuses on physical skills such as the development of hand-eye coordination and the use of motor skills. The psychomotor skills help people perform physical tasks in daily life and at the work. The areas of these domains include perception. Students are sensory cues to guide their motor activities. For example, students may listen to a teacher's lesson and write down corresponding notes. So the instructional verbs include distinguish, identify, and select. The next one is set. Students feel ready to act upon challenges and resolve them. For example, a student who wants to improve their grade is motivated to study for their next test. The instructional verbs include assume a position, demonstrate, and show. Next is the guided response. Students begin learning complex skills, often through trial and error or the following instructions. For example, students learn how to build a simple circuit by watching an instructional video. The instructional verbs include attempt, imitate, and try. The next is the mechanism. Students develop basic proficiency when performing particular tasks, often through practice. For example, a piano student feels confidence playing a song assigned by her teacher after weeks of practicing. The instructional verbs include perform, complete, and duplicate. Next is the complex overt response. So the students learn to perform a task with advanced proficiency. For example, a piano student knows how to play a song without needing to look at the keys. The instructional verbs include carry out, operate, and perform. Next is the adaptation. Students have developed their skills and can change them to meet specific requirements. For example, a culinary student knows how to adjust their recipe to meet the particular dietary restriction. The instructional verbs include adapt, change, modify, and revise. The last one is the origination. Students learn how to develop a new skill using principles learned while gaining the original skill. For example, a student who has taken ballet classes choreograph a dance for a recital. The instructional verbs include create, design, and originate. Why are the domains of learning important? The domains of learning teach students to think critically by using methods that make the most sense to them. They also give teachers tools to cater the learning experience to the specific needs of each student. By assigning tasks with the learning domain in mind, teacher can help students understand and retain information based on how they learned best. So that would be all. Thank you. Hope you liked the video.
To our very understanding professor, Ma'am Nerissa Beatriz, to my classmates, I am Daryl S. Regaspi, and I will be discussing about the nature of learning.
Learning involves constant growth and development. Learning is a continuous process that helps a person to understand the environment. This leads to the growth and improvement of an individual. Continuous learning is the process of learning new skills and knowledge as an ongoing basis. This can come in many forms, from formal course taking to casual social learning. It involves self-initiative and taking on challenges. Learning is adjustment. Learning makes a person adjustable and adaptable. The person should adapt and mold himself according to developmental changes taking place in and around him. Learning helps the individual to adjust himself adequately to the new situations. Most learning in children consists in modifying, adapting, and developing their original nature. In latter life, the individuals acquire new forms of behavior. Learning is systematized experience. Learning includes repetition of experiences, which results in improving learners' attitude, knowledge, principles, abilities, and habits continuously. Learning always involves some kind of experience, direct or indirect. Next is learning involves the attainment of knowledge and skills. Learning provides the most effective method through which a person can improve his talents, abilities, and skills, which are necessary for completing the task effectively. Next is, learning is a conditioning process. Conditioning and learning are often used interchangeably. Specifically, conditioning refers to the process acquisition of a specific kind of attitude. The conditioning theory of learning describes a form of learning where learning occurs as a result of associating a condition or stimulus with a particular reaction or response. Another is learning involves change. The learning process brings important changes in the behavior of a person by the means of regular training, education, experience, and practice. It is a change of behavior influenced by previous behavior. It is any activity that leaves a more or less permanent effect on later activity. Another is, learning is a continuous process. Learning is an ongoing process. It affects all kinds of behavior and continuous life. It denotes the lifelong nature of learning. Every day, new situations are faced, and the individual has to bring essential changes in his style of behavior adapted to tackle them. Learning is birth to death. The next one is, learning is a transferable process. Learning is a transferable process because learning can be conveyed from one person to another by sharing expressions, viewpoints, values, emotions, and communications. Transfer of learning means the use of previously acquired knowledge and skills in new learning or problem-solving situations. Next is, learning it comes about as a result of practice. It is the basis of drill and practice. It has been proven that students learn best and retain information longer when they have meaningful practice and repetition. Every time practice occurs, learning continues. Next is the learning as growth and development. It is never-ending growth and development. At each stage, the learner acquires new visions of his future, growth, and new ideals of achievement in the direction of his effort. Allow me to show to you an example of the learning process through this diagram. The first phase is attention. Here, where attention is absent, learning terminates. Attention is necessary for bringing information into the active memory and keeping it alive. So, in the first place, the learning process helps the learner to target his attention on the action of learning. However, this should not be limited to the first phase only, as attention must be sustained effectively in the entire process of learning. It will be followed by expectancy. Here, in this phase, due to the planned process of learning, the learner looks forward to something good happening. This results in the origination of various inspirational ideas to devote oneself to the consequential phases of learning. Next phase will be the retrieval of relevant information to working memory. Here, through this phase, the learner carries the structure from the long-term memory, which is very necessary for gaining new information or getting answers to the problems faced. Next phase is the selective perception. In this phase, the learner usually focuses his attention on the main instructions that are highlighted in the presentation. The teachers can't analyze the attention of students by mere inspection, which ultimately results in the learner's inability to learn due to their incorrect attention. Selective perception fails either due to the insufficiency of the part of presentation to draw attention, or the learner fails to apply attention, or due to both of these factors. Next phase is encoding entry of information into long-term stage, wherein in this phase, the learner usually covers the fact on which he has already applied attention. For example, there is a transfer of facts into lasting memory where the individual establishes an association with the already stored facts. Next phase is the response. In this phase, the learner recalls the facts and events that have been collected in his enduring memory, and he precisely uses them in his tasks. The learner's proper execution of work shows that this learning process is correct. Next one is feedback. In this phase, the learner primarily figures out the range of work satisfaction through the achievement of knowledge during the previous phase. When the outcome of the feedback indicates positively of the performance, it serves as an encouragement to the learner. When this feedback points out flaws in the learner's performance, he again returns to the earlier phase of learning to rectify them for future actions. For example, the learner can go back and retrospect and attain the mandatory knowledge or apply his for more efficiently during selective observation, and then augment with new zeal of enthusiasm. The learner proceeds again for the future course of action in the consequent phase. The learner cannot proceed towards step unless and until the information has been acquired to his satisfaction. And the last phase is cueing retrieval. In this phase, the learner usually recalls or applies the facts which he has to attain initial stages. Then, he focuses on the preservation of the facts or simply the application of knowledge. Let me end my topic with this quotation. Develop a passion for learning. If you do, you will never cease to grow. By Anthony J. Angelo. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day, everyone.
Good day, everyone. I am teacher Cheryl M. Sarahan, and our report is about learning. But I'm going to discuss to you first the concept of learning. Let us first think about it. It is an accepted fact that teachers are usually not born but made. Good teachers nurture their knowledge and skills through constant and deliberate efforts. One of the prerequisites to be a good teacher is to understand the teaching-learning process in more depth. This facilitates better appreciation of the teaching profession as well as the process of imparting education. This is intended to give an insight into the concept of teaching and learning for teachers who intend to excel in their teaching career. I have here some of the definitions of learning. First, learning has been defined by the educational psychologists in different ways and meanings. It has been explained as a quantitative increase in knowledge, memorizing of facts, skills and methods that can be retained and used as necessary. Another definition, learning is the acquisition of habits, knowledge and attitudes. It involves new way of doing things and it operates in individuals' attempts to overcome obstacles or to adjust to new situations. It represents progressive changes in behavior. It enables him to satisfy interests to attain goals. What is the concept of learning? Learning is about a change. The change brought about by developing a new skill, understanding a scientific law, changing an attitude. The change is not merely incidental or natural in the way that our appearance changes as we get older. Learning is a relatively permanent change, usually brought about intentionally. When we attend a course, search through a book, or read a discussion paper, we set out to learn. Other learning can take place without planning, for example, by experience. Generally, with all learning, there is an element within us of wishing to remember and understand why something happens and to do it better next time. Here are keywords to remember. First, learning. Second, behaviorism. Third, humanism. And fourth, connectivism. Here is to explain the concept of learning in the light of the views of behaviorists, humanists, and connectivists. Behaviorism. According to the behaviorists, learning is not an active but passive process of memorizing information that requires external reward. Understanding is merely seeing relationship or patterns, and applications requires not more than transfer of training. Humanism. According to humanists, learning is a personal act of individual to fully utilize his potential. It is essential that instructional activities should be based on the learner's basic needs for the success of learning process. It is an unending curiosity that includes identifying, discovering, drawing in from the outside world, and making that which is drawn in a real part of life of me. Learning situation must allow the learner to move at a pace that best suited to him. It should provide opportunities for continuous assessment and utilization of the feedback as a part of learning. On connectivism, connectivists believe that learning is a way of being. It is an ongoing pattern of attitudes and action by individuals and groups which they employ to deal with the surprising, new, novel, messy, obtrusive events and situations. It occurs in different ways from the practicing communities, personal networks, and through completion of work-related tasks. It is a continuous process for a lifetime without separation from work-related activities. They are a model of learning which recognizes that learning is no longer an internal, individualistic activity. It provides an insight and skills to the learners how to flourish and progress in a digital era of technology. Here are the other views of behaviorists, humanists, and connectivists. Behaviorism suggests that all behavior is acquired through conditioning and can therefore be observed without consideration of thoughts and feelings. Since all behavior is but a response, behaviorism also suggests that anyone can learn to perform any action with the right conditioning. What is the concept of behavioral theory? Behavioral theory holds that psychological events can be described and explained in terms of observable behavior and its association with environmental stimuli and occurrences. Humanistic teachers believe that knowledge and feelings go hand in hand in the learning process. Cognitive and affective learning are both important to humanistic learning. Lessons and activities should focus on the whole student and their intellect and feelings, not one or the other. Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn." That's my report about concept of learning. Thank you and God bless everyone.